regenerative medicine, including the use of live cells, has the potential to give us new and potentially disruptive treatments. To help us understand the state of the union, we are just delighted to have Scott Bruder, CEO of Bruder Consulting and Venture Group, giving us the state of the union for regenerative medicine. Scott?
Fantastic, Robin. Thank you for the opportunity. And I'm sorry that I'm not able to be with everybody in Orlando because we all look forward all year to the Academy meeting. And unfortunately, we're in this situation. But I'm glad people are joining today. So thank you. And what I have in 5 quick slides and 2 questions is to sort of frame the future around this field, orthobiologics, tissue regeneration more broadly, and the growing need for evidence, the growing need for evidence-based medicine to succeed here. I'll start with this slide, which is really the work from my good friends over at OrthoWorld, showing the 2018 results on sales. Top line worldwide sales is $51 billion for orthopedics overall. Importantly, 10% of that, or $5 billion, is in this orthobiologics market, which is a wide variety of biomaterials, cell-based therapies, PRP, growth factors. But what's interesting is that in that period, and OrthoWorld will have their 2019 data available later this spring, you can see the total market grew 3.5%, but orthobiologics was flat. And the big part of that was the loss of the viscosupplementation, the reduction of those units and those procedures, mostly, I think, in part because of Academy's position and insurance that's taking a harder look. But what's really interesting here is that you see in this 39% segment here, this is 200 firms. And if you look at that at $2 billion, it's an average of $10 million a firm. So there's lots and lots of firms out there, 200, that are selling on average just $10 million of product. When you break out this $5 billion, you see, in fact, that it lays out this way, where the bone field, the bone products are about 60%. Here looking at 2020, this is an estimate, but bone is 60%. The light blue is HA, or hyaluronic acid viscosupplementation, and MACI, or cartilage repair. Most of this is that viscosupplementation. And in the center here, this thin segment is the soft tissue. And this is where the market is least mature, but also represents some significant opportunities. So now, Katerina, can we go to the first question, which is, for those of you on the phone, you can't see it, but I'll just read it out loud. Are you currently selling, or do you have plans to sell orthobiologic products over the next 5 years? Choices were selling now and have plans to launch more, selling now but have no plans to launch more, or not currently selling but have plans to launch, or not currently selling and have no plans to launch. This is, I think, a bit of a litmus test for how people are feeling about the environment and what the opportunity looks like. Catherine, do we have a decent number of replies yet that we can put up there? If it's going to be delayed, I'll just continue and we can maybe give these results at the end. So I think, since I don't see it, we'll talk about those. Oh, here we go. Okay, that's interesting. So 40% not selling and not planning. Another almost 40% selling now and have plans to do new products. Very few that are selling now but have no plans to launch new products, and some that are not selling. So the 37, so it's about 60% can plan to continue to sell products. Thank you very much. That's really interesting. We know that there's dedicated hardware companies that have no intention of selling biologic products. That's just fine. Well, why is that? Part of the reason is, I'll show this example here of 2020 coverage on a variety of these biologic tissue repair and regeneration products. You can see from infused BMP2 to the various demineralized bone products or allograft products, including next on the list would be articular cartilage repair with culture expanded chondrocytes, and then all of these other products, platelet-rich plasma, allogeneic bone graft or MSC therapies. By the way, we should all be very clear, there are no stem cell products that are approved in any condition of musculoskeletal tissue repair or regeneration. That's just, it's not arguable. The agency is very clear about that. They put out public messages. And the reason this is relevant here on this slide is whether all of these products that are non-covered, the reason they're non-covered is they lack sufficient evidence, and they also lack sufficient code. So they neither have the important triad of coding, coverage, and payment. And so what's interesting is that while many of these products on the bottom half of the slide are relatively easily cleared into the market, they don't have reimbursement status that's favorable. So they wind up being paid for out of pocket. And in fact, many of these, if any of them at all, to receive a specific reimbursement, have years of work ahead of them. And so the dichotomy here is those that invest heavily in a PMA or a BLA, which could cost $30 to $100 million or more, they're going to be the ones that have the opportunity for reimbursement. So I'm setting the landscape. I'm trying to provide some of the guardrails and identify the importance of evidence-based medicine if you want to get reimbursed. At the same time, the authorities are stepping up their surveillance here, and you've got FDA, who on the heels of the 2017 guidance around HCTPs, which deal with things like cell therapy and PRP and bone marrow and amniotic tissue, which are different than recombinant growth factors, you've got them issuing nearly 50 warning letters already and telling the community that in November of 2020, this discretionary period is going to be over. You also have the FTC, who is levying fines, multi-million-dollar fines on physicians and practices for advertising improperly and making statements and claims on their websites about things that these, quote, stem cells do, or things that PRP does, or things that amniotic tissue does, for which there are no claims and there's no substantial evidence. And so that's hopefully creating a little rebound effect where people are coming back into appropriate behavior. And then, of course, you've got the societies themselves, whether it's AAOS or ISPRM or the various medical boards that influence not just physicians, but they also influence OEM manufacturers and industry people, like I think are most represented on this call today. And so my last slide, before we go to the last question, is, what does this mean for new product targets? Well, I have these conclusions. Bone graft is a very mature market. If you're going to do something new to grow that $3 billion market, it's going to have something that is based on evidence, efficacy, value, profitability. So bone is a very mature market. But articular cartilage, which has been regarded as the holy grail, it's still missing something that is really a winner. So we see the folks at Vericel growing substantially. And I'll say Vericel is not one of my client partners. We have about 20 client partners, but I didn't go through a disclosure because I'm not talking about any of their company specific products. But this still remains the holy grail. Meniscal repair. We've seen a product go, fight the legal battle and eventually get into market, but it's not a blockbuster. And so there are a lot of these devices out there. There's some that are in development and some going through the agency now. This represents an important product opportunity, as does ACL repair. Now, obviously, there's a whole littering of skeletons, no pun intended, on the roadside here. But if you can develop a biomaterial with proper mechanics, there's a big opportunity. I think one of the largest opportunities is IV disc repair and regeneration, or prevention of degeneration. This is most likely an HCTP, a drug, or a combination product, but still years away. And my last comment here is that the FDA pathway, as I've already alluded to, these 510K, there are ways to get products cleared into the 510K highway, so to speak, and that get you market presence. But in the absence of clinical data, the challenge is going to be reimbursement. And so let me close with, I'll stop the share and come back to the last question that I asked Katerina to put together. If you could post that one, which is based on your understanding of the evolving FDA rules and market forces, not just the FDA rules. What actions are you going to take over the next 5 years? So A, business as usual. I'm cavalier and not concerned about FDA or FTC compliance. There's a lot of people out there, and I go to meetings and I talk about the compliance issues, and I see docs, clinicians just saying, you know what, there's 30,000 orthopedic surgeons, let them get me. I don't subscribe to that view, but we'll see how people on the company side do. We'll bring our risky practice into compliance, but still market aggressively. C, we're committed to collecting clinical data to support reimbursement. Or D, the hurdles of compliance and data generation are just too high, so we're not going to continue to invest. Love to see the results as soon as they're available.
I have to say, Scott, those are terrific questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I love the answer. I love this answer because
Wow.
it makes me say people are getting the message. Sorry, almost 80% said we're committed to collecting clinical data to support reimbursement. So that's fantastic. I think it's fun. It's fun to see that 5% are still so cavalier they don't give a damn. They're just going to do business as usual, and that fewer. It's a small portion, and so I'm delighted to see this. There are challenges. Glenn will tell you the same thing. There's challenges with collecting good data, but I'm delighted to see that people are committed. So with that, thanks for the opportunity, and look forward to the rest of the conversation.